Hello, my love. I hope you are doing well. Welcome to RX Tarot and Astrology. My name is Reilly X, and I'm going to go through every single astrological placement. So, if you've been wanting to learn astrology and understand your personal chart more, you've come to the right place. Also, I do offer personalized readings, so if you're interested, you can book a reading at rxtarot.com. For this reading, I really want to start with the sun sign for a few reasons. One, it is the placement that most people know. Like, I am a Capricorn sun, so a lot of the times I would say I'm a Capricorn, even though that is just such a small part of your chart. So, what is the sun sign? The sun sign is your ego, okay? It is more so your vitality, your life, and in a lot of ways, it's sort of this faded feeling of your life. It's how things can sort of play out. It's not really who you are, though. It's almost the container of where you live. Does that make sense? The sun sign is your ego. It's that outer shell. It's the way people perceive you. It's not your rising sign, which is who you truly are, right? At a soul level is really your rising sign. Your sun sign is who you are in your life, in your human, everyday, day-to-day life. So when you think about the sun in our chart, first of all, the sun rules Leo. So if you think about a Leo, right? Leo can be self-centered. They can be all about them, but they want to create. They want people to have fun here. They understand that shining and being the center of attention brings people together. So when you think about your sun placement, depending on where it is in your chart and what sign it's in, makes a huge difference. So let's say you have your sun in the first house. There's more of a focus of self. You have a better understanding of self. You have a deeper knowing of who you're supposed to be, or your life is always pulling you back to that realization. Who am I? What is my focus? You have your sun in the first house. There's this intense pressure on understanding yourself. So whatever sign it's in, if it's in the first house, you will always come back full circle to who you're supposed to be and how you would do it, which a lot of times means the way it works for other people is not the way it's going to work for you. There's a very heavy focus with Mars being the ruler of the first house, how you take action, how you take initiative. What is your will, right? Your will be done. The first house is all about how you would do it. So with the sun in the first house, you are always going to come back to how you would do it, which on the other hand means that you may not get the help that you're looking for. You may not find a lot of people that are going to understand the way you want to do things. You have to do it. With your sun in the second house, there is a heavy focus on value, on worth, on finances. Sun in the second house is relatively lucky. The second house being all about self-worth. When you really see your value and you understand your purpose, your worth to other people, having a sun in the second house is nearly unstoppable. There could be this energy of, I don't know how to be of service to somebody else. I don't know how to step into that power. But the irony is the way you fix this, the way you find your path in life as someone with your sun in the second house, you have to come back to seeing your own personal value. That is the only way you're ever going to get over that hump, is realizing the skills that you personally bring to the table, the value that you hold, and your worth. You have to see yourself as worthy in order for other people to be like, oh, obviously you're worthy. Okay. Again, the sign will make things different, and then varying degrees of how difficult it is for you to stay in that energy or not. The second house being ruled by Venus has such an intense energy around love, around finances, around worth and value, right? But there's an internalized energy there as well in the second house. How do you see your personal worth? So let's say you have your sun in the third house. The third house being ruled by Mercury, it's all about your communication, it's about the way you think, and it's your mind. all of this energy, having this extra focus on your ego, tells me who you are as somebody who can speak to a crowd. You're somebody who can hold the attention of people. You're a great storyteller. And you're also someone who knows how to communicate really well. When you're in your strength, when you're in your power, when you're in that place of really seeing who you are, you'll notice a common theme. The sun sign is all about feeling your power. Remember, the sun is at the center of the solar system. So that intense energy here, that feeling of the sun is really the reason that everything is operating the way it does here on Earth. So if you step into that third house sun power, you have the ability to connect to anybody. You have the potential to create a following and to make something that really speaks to people on a deeper level. But you have to see the value in it first. If you have your sun in the fourth house, there is this intense focus on your roots. The fourth house being ruled by the moon, there's this internalized energy. You may not be as outwardly spoken. You may be a little bit more shy. You may have more of a reserved sense about you because you realize what you share outside is how people internalize you. Now, there could also be a really heavy focus on family. If you have your sun in the fourth house, there could be this sense of being very connected to your family or feeling like you can always rely on them, or something with your family being a huge aspect of your life, which I know is true for most people, but I mean to a deeper level, like you have rich parents or you have a really big family that you kind of have to take care of everybody. Again, the sign makes a big difference. But having your sun in the fourth can have such an intense energy on coming back to your roots, your family, your childhood, a heavy focus on your past, and you can sometimes get stuck there. It's interesting because people with their sun in the fourth house can have a really heavy focus on being connected to their past or being connected to their family, but that can also hold them back as well. Now, if you have your sun in the fifth house, this is pretty lucky as well, because the fifth house is all about the sun. The sun rules the fifth house. So if you have your sun in the fifth house, you have a deep understanding of the purpose of life, the purpose of creation, and that is to create. That's it. To create because it's joyful, because it's fulfilling, because you get to check a little box. There's no deeper meaning behind life other than fulfillment and joy. You tend to be much more understanding of that concept. Having your sun in the fifth house really has this deep connection to your creation. It can be children. People talk about that all the time. I don't want children personally, so I don't usually talk about that very often. But if you do want children, it can be your children. That is something that you create, right? That you bring into this life, is you make a decision or don't, to bring a child into this life. That is still your creation, whether you consciously made that choice or not. So the fifth house can really be about children if there's a focus there. Just because you have your sun sign in the fifth house does not mean that you will have children. Just want to be clear on that. And really, furthermore, just because you have any sort of placement doesn't mean something will happen. Okay. But understanding your astrology is about understanding how you can use the energies that have been affecting you since birth. So to have your sun in the fifth is all about letting yourself be the happiest version of yourself you can be, letting yourself be excited to exist as you are, which I think is really beautiful in a lot of ways. So you're likely very creative as somebody with your sun in the fifth. You likely want to do something artistic or creative or have some sort of passion to really bring something into this world, which I love. If you have your sun sign in the sixth house, there is a heavy focus on day-to-day life, on what you're doing for your routine, The sixth house is partially ruled by Mercury and partially ruled by Chiron, but not a lot of people talk about that. Chiron, being the wounded healer, brings that extra intensity, brings that extra energy of what am I going to do now, right? And I think it's interesting because Mercury being our communication, being the way we think, being the way we speak to other people, and then Chiron bringing sort of this what has happened in our past energy into the sixth house is fascinating to me, because a lot of the time what holds us back on a day-to-day basis is our past. It is the fear of the past repeating, right? So when you think about it like that, the sixth house is your daily routines. It's what you're focused on a daily basis. And it's about how you overcome that Chiron wound, how you day to day heal yourself through action, through doing something now, by being focused in the now and no longer being obsessed with that memory. If you have your sun in the seventh house, there is this focus on relationships. The seventh house is also ruled by Venus, just like the second house. But with the seventh house, it's much more about your close personal relationships. There tends to be a heavier focus on romance coming out of the seventh house as well. So when you think about the seventh house, if you have your sun placement there, you're likely really good at connecting with other people. You're likely really good at finding the middle ground, finding a way to relate to somebody else, which is really beautiful. It's an energy that you can really use in anything. You can use that in partnerships, but friendships, business partnerships, you're probably great at interviews, you know what I mean? Things like that, where you have that ability to, see yourself in somebody else. So using that to your advantage is awesome, but using that to your disadvantage, which would be waiting for that other person to accept you or thinking that you have to be a certain way because that's what they're expecting, that's where that can go a little bit wrong. So make sure that when or if you have your sun in the seventh, you're not obsessed with trying to be who your partner wants you to be. That's my only warning there. Otherwise, I love that placement. The dreaded eighth house. If you have your sun in the eighth house, you're in good hands. My sun is in the eighth house as well. You have Pluto roaming around your sun. Pluto rules the eighth house. Pluto is the underworld. It's the taboo topics. It's the darker aspects of life that nobody wants to look at. And you have your sun like a flashlight shining on it. Hello. So having your sun in the eighth house is, needless to say, difficult. But it's not impossible. And it's actually really beautiful when you let yourself truly lean into your goth mentality of life. You think a dead rose looks more beautiful than a live rose. I feel you. Lean into it. Let yourself be that version of yourself. Let yourself be who you actually are. I think one of the hardest things about having your sun in the eighth house is about being seen for who you truly are, because you're taboo in every way. Like, everything about you makes people uncomfortable. It's not your fault. It just is what it is. You bring an intensity, you bring a transformation that people who don't have any depth can't reach. You know what I mean? So keep doing you, boo. That one was a little bit more personal. If you have your sun sign in the ninth house, this is an intense expansion of your life, which is beautiful. Jupiter rules the ninth house. So there's this extra energy of expanding throughout your life. Experiences are likely always happening. Think, travel and trying new things. And this is something I believe for everybody, but especially for you. Words don't teach, experience does. And for you to have your sun in the ninth house tells me you know that better than most. experience is the only thing that will actually teach you what you need to know. So letting yourself go out there and make mistakes is a huge part of having your sun in the 9th house. But there's also an aspect of luck that I find interesting, because I'm not going to say go out and try and win the lottery. Not that you wouldn't. I just mean there's sort of this aspect where the universe tends to catch you. Spirit tends to always be following you. The 9th house is your higher self as well. So there's sort of this deeper connection to that higher version of yourself. Your soul is really present with you in this world. If you have your sun in the 10th house, this is a really interesting energy, and every single person I've ever done a reading for or have known personally with their sun in the 10th is obsessed with achieving something in their life. The 10th house is ruled by Saturn, so you have that really heavy focus on building structure for yourself. The 10th house is all about career for a reason, because it's about really achieving something in this lifetime. So for you to have your sun in the 10th, you can put a lot of pressure on yourself to be successful, to do that thing that's life-changing for not only you, but everyone around you. Which is nice in theory, but it's also really intense. So remember to rest. Remember that working 4 jobs is probably not a great idea in the long run. I understand, like, right now you're making money, and I get it. But yeah, maybe think that one through a little bit. If you have your sun in the 11th house, you have that energy of Uranus, okay? Which is the forward-thinking planet. It is the house of social media. I do it like this because it's really about your public persona, right? Which I understand why people think, social media is the 11th house. That makes sense. With your sun in the 11th house, there is a heavy focus on social media. And basically, when I say that, being seen, being noticed, being known for something, maybe being a little bit weird, off the beaten path. Uranus, being the ruler of that house, has such a heavy focus on forward thinking. Uranus was the first planet discovered using a telescope. So it was the first planet ever seen without the naked eye. It was something that we needed technology to be able to perceive. So if you think about Uranus like that, you can understand these sudden changes that come from technological advancements. Once we see that planet through the telescope, we're like, oh my God, there's so much more out there that we can't see. It immediately opens our mind to that next level. So if you have your sun in the 11th, there's this heavy focus on being somebody that opens other people's eyes, right? You're somebody who does things. You may be a trendsetter. It could be something simple like that. It doesn't have to be, life-changing things here, but it's something that you help people see, oh, this is a cool way we can do things. You're also likely very good with technology and being able to think on your feet and make things happen. And you're probably really good in a pinch, which is nice, but it's also really frustrating when people are just always knocking on your door and being like, hey, can you help me? I need you. So having your sun in the 11th house is all about really letting yourself be seen as your unique self in your authenticity. If you have your sun in the 12th house, there is this heavy focus on your subconscious. Neptune is the planet ruler of the 12th house, which is all about the watery unknown, this deep aspect of wisdom and understanding from a place that's really hard to explain. Neptune is the depths. It is the ocean, right? We don't know what the hell is going on in the ocean. People will pretend like they know. They don't know. They don't know shit. Okay. So with all of that being said, the 12th house is your subconscious. It's the things that you can't see. It's the aspects of yourself that you're unsure of. So having your sun in the 12th house tells me you're always being pulled back to whatever program you're already set to. And for you, it's interesting because when you trust the unknown, when you let yourself just sort of give it a go, it will work out. But it's then on you to convince yourself of that. The 12th house is all about your subconscious, and the only way you can connect to your subconscious is the repetition of what you do on a daily basis. So if you are someone with your sun in the 12th and you're trying to be or become a certain version of yourself, you really have to let the programming sink in. You need to do self-hypnosis. You need to find ways to let go of an older version of yourself or a younger version of yourself that you really aren't anymore. It's time for you to step into who you really are, and a huge part of that is always unknown to you, which can be uncomfortable. I hope you enjoyed this video, my love. Remember that I'm going to go through every single sign as well, so stay tuned for those. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video if you liked it, and leave a comment if you have any questions about either anything I said or something more personal about your astrology. And yeah, you can always book a reading at rxtarot.com. If you want a personalized reading and a session, you can check out my offers there. I will see you soon. Love you. Bye.